And I apologize if it's hard to hear me at times. My iPhone seems to be not cooperating as much as I would like it to be. So we do have the chat option. So if you're unable to hear, if you have a technical question, you could just chat it, and then we'll be able to see if you have any questions or if you need any technical assistance. Thank you. So again, we wanted to thank you for participating in today's important webinar, and we hope that you'll find it helpful in working towards your business development plans and looking at clinic functioning and fiscal viability. We have an agenda today, of course, and our agenda is we're going to have a very brief recap from last week. And then we're really going to focus most of our time developing personalized indicators and continuous quality improvement processes. And so a couple abbreviations that we may use throughout today would be KPI, which is a key personalized performance indicator, and then also CQI, which would be continuous quality improvement, and I'm sure many of us, if not all of us, are very familiar with at least the CQI acronym. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the action steps and then the wrap-up. And so if I wanted to introduce myself, I'm Julie Gutowski. I'm Managing Director of Clinical Operations at Spectrum Human Services, and we're a not-for-profit in Western New York. And I'm joined by Elizabeth Cleek, and she'll introduce herself in a few minutes. And so first we wanted to review the action steps from Module 9. And were you able to identify the primary problems from your benchmarking tool, developing a plan, an action plan for addressing those problems? What did you find out? Were you able to develop an action plan? What barriers were you able to identify? And what solutions to those barriers were you able to identify? What we would like to start the webinar with is really a few polling questions. And if we could launch the polling questions, please. And we have 3 questions for you. And we're going to give you about 1.5 to 2 minutes to complete the polling questions. The first thing we want to know is, did you log in alone or as a core team? And if you could answer A, logged in by myself, B, with 1 other person, C, more than 2 other people, and D, more than 4 other people. The second question is, who is on the line? A, finance, B, clinic leadership, C, executive leadership, D, clinician, and E, professional staff. And you can select more than 1 answer for those questions. And lastly, our third question to start the webinar is, do you use performance indicators as part of your management practices? A, yes, B, unsure, no is C, and D, what are performance indicators? And like I said, we're going to give you about 1.5 minutes to answer those questions, and then we'll look at the results. Okay, a few more seconds and we should have the results. In just a few more seconds, we'll be able to have the results for you. Okay, thank you very much. It looks like most of us have logged in by yourself, and that would be about 41%. And then who's on the line? It looks like clinical leadership. About 48% of us are related to clinical leadership. And do you use performance indicators? Most are saying yes, they do, and we have quite a few people who didn't answer the question, so thank you for participating. And the reason we ask some of these polling questions is so we can get an idea about who's on the line and then try to adapt the material we're talking about to the audience. So thank you for that. I appreciate you taking the time to answer those. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Cleek.
Okay, hi everyone, and thank you, Julie. I'm Elizabeth Cleek. I'm the Vice President for Program Design, Evaluation, and Systems Implementation at ICL. And Julie and I are going to take you through today's presentation. Okay, so we've started, just to recap what we've done so far. We started at the point of overview with financial planning and benchmarking, and have really moved through a number of the specific aspects of financial modeling over time. And then through how to use this information to guide your strategic planning in the past few weeks. So today we're going to spend time on the key performance indicators and connecting the information from the benchmarking tool and your strategic plan to the ongoing work and daily monitoring to inform your decision-making in clinic. So as we've discussed repeatedly, using data effectively is really an imperative. And again, data is just another word for information. So as with all information, you want to make sure your data is accurate. So the three keys with data are that it's accurate, that it's complete, and that it's timely. And the timeliness so that you're making decisions based on current information. With regard to accuracy, just a reminder to really look at the spreadsheet in front of you as you're collecting data and eyeball for typos. So for example, if a decimal point is missing or if it's in the wrong place, it can make a huge impact in the way your info is, in the way your information is calculated, and then of course in how you understand the information. Similarly, one incorrect digit in a diagnosis code can also make an impact. So people are human, and so mistakes with data entry can always happen. And the key is just to make sure you're reviewing and making sure that the data makes sense. Additionally, you want to make sure that everyone who's entering data is defining information in the same way. So making sure you have an operational definition for each indicator that you're tracking and ensuring that everyone has been trained on that definition. So Julie is going to speak more about no-shows as the example later on, and the importance of making sure that everyone is defining no-show as one of the key performance indicators, the no-show rate, that everybody is defining no-show in the same way. So once you've passed those hurdles, that your data is accurate, that it's accurately coded, and that it's entered in a timely fashion, you can use the information that you have to guide your next steps. So I'm a big believer in a person's gut. Okay, if your gut tells you something is off, then that's a good indication that it's something that you want to look at. But there's a saying, trust but verify. And that's what your data is for your gut. You use your data to better understand the situation, and it may be much more complex or even more simple than you think. The key is to use the information you're collecting to inform your understanding and your planning. Okay. So key performance indicators help an organization define and measure progress towards its organizational goals. The key performance indicators are the units of measurement that you use to make sure you're on track with meeting your goals. And to put clearly and concisely, key performance indicators bridge your goals and your results and help you focus on how you're going to measure the work you're doing to achieve the goals you've set in your strategic plan. We did find an article that we've included in the resource section, which is referenced here, and which offers a really straightforward approach to KPIs. Okay, so again, your KPIs link all the pieces together. They should be consistent with your mission, with your clinic goals, with your strategic plan. And they are the place where you're really going to be able to pull all of that together and monitor how you're doing with your progress toward your goals. You want to review, we really recommend that in thinking about your KPIs, you review your benchmarking tool and your strategic plan, and you identify what data would tell you that progress is made or not being made. And then would this data flow from the work processes you've put in place? And that's really important because you want to make sure that you're going to be able to track your key performance indicators in the course of the work that you do. Okay? So again, Julie is going to go through a specific example in just a moment, but just to think through the steps, you want to really clearly define the indicator and identify the minimum number that you must hit to achieve your goal at the end of the year. So you're really thinking about how am I going to achieve my goal, and what are the steps I need to take to get there, and then what is the minimum number that I need to hit in terms of my goal? Where do I need to reach in order to meet that goal? You want to, with regard to measurement, time points. Again, you want to make sure you're reviewing your data in a time frame that's meaningful, that it doesn't lag too far behind so as not to really inform your current state. Okay? And then assessing reasonableness. Is this something you can measure, collect, and use to inform? How will you use the information? Again, that CQI, that Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. How will you use the information, and what will you do if you find you're not making the progress you want? Okay, and so with that, I'm going to turn the slides over to Julie, who will really make this live and live with an example.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. For those of you guys who have joined me on a webinar before, I have a tendency to really focus on not only the fiscal viability of things, but we also focus on how it affects clinical practice. And so key performance indicators, they're going to be things that you're going to want to look at and measure that are going to help you keep the doors open and also hopefully improve clinical practices in the same way, because I see those two pieces very closely correlated. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands and kind of, I understand, correct me if I'm misspeak, Elizabeth, I would appreciate it. To really to summarize, key performance indicators should be clearly defined, captured in a way that can be reported, provide information that is important to the strategic vision, and representative of the clinic and business objectives. And so I kind of wanted to start with why is it important to have key performance indicators. I love food, and I love chicken barbecues. And I'm a little bit busy because I work, and then I also have a life outside of work. And so last year, my mission was for the entire summer, my mission was to go to as many chicken barbecues as I could during the summer. That was my goal, and it's pretty easy, and it really is what I wanted to do. The bottom line is because I wasn't specific about how many that meant, I went to 0 chicken barbecues last year. And so that's a really good example for me about why it's important to really make sure that things are clearly defined that you're looking to measure. Because as many chicken barbecues, you can't put a number on that, but I could put a number on 5. Just like to decrease a no-show rate, that's really, it's part of or could be part of a key performance indicator. However, you need to be more specific than that, okay? So let's talk a little bit through this in the case example. And key performance indicators, we kind of have an 8-step process, and I'm going to briefly go through the steps 1 through 8, and then I'll talk a little bit more about them in detail related to a no-show, decreasing no-show. Step 1, the overview. What are you trying to achieve? Step 2, assessment. What can we impact? So with no-shows, what am I trying to achieve? I'm trying to increase billable services. And the assessment, what can I impact easily that'll have the most kind of bang for my buck? Well, if I decrease the no-show rate, then I'm not utilizing scheduled time for people who aren't coming, and then I could put clients who are coming, and I could actually increase my billable that way. Diagnostic, why does the problem exist? Step 4 is the solution. What do we target? Step 5, setting goals. What do we need to achieve? What is the magic number that you need to achieve for your clinic, whether it's related to billed services or it's related to a specific percentage of a no-show rate, that you're going to be able to still be fiscally viable? And then step 6, action plan. How do you achieve it? Step 7, identifying the indicators. How will we know when the changes are working? And step 8, monitoring and contingency planning. So if we're really talking about no-shows, the first thing, if it's a key performance indicator, the first thing I'm going to want to do as an administrator or clinic leadership is I want to make sure that everybody is using the same definition of a no-show. If I polled, we have 38 participants on the line. If I asked everybody, what is your definition of a no-show, I bet we would get at least 5 different variations of what a no-show is. Some people may say a no-show is somebody doesn't call and doesn't come to the appointment. That's true, that's a no-show. Somebody else would say a no-show means somebody does not call, does not come to the appointment, and did not cancel within 24 hours, okay? Another person would say, well, the person called and canceled an hour before, so it's not a no-show. So the first thing you really want to do is make sure that everybody has the same definition of no-show. And everybody means agency and clinic-wide, that we understand what no-shows mean. And a no-show, sometimes it feels that people have a negative connotation or get a negative feeling related to the term. The reality is a no-show means the person did not come to their appointment. At my agency, if a person misses the appointment and does not call more than 24 hours in advance, it's considered a no-show. So the clinicians were upset by this because they said, what happens when Stacy comes every single time and on the way in she gets a flat tire and now I have to give her a no-show? And so there's a lot of discussion about, well, what does that really mean? Is a no-show really this negative, derogatory event that people seem to have feelings toward it? And so what we did at Spectrum is we created a category, so it's still considered a no-show, but we created a subcategory, and so we are able to identify that contact was made. So we have a no-show, which is a code 1, we have a cancel, which is a code 99, and I have a no-show contact made, which is a 6. So one of the big things with the key performance indicator is make sure that everybody has the same consistent definition, and to listen to your team and the people who are really going to be doing the work and get their involvement and their buy-in so everybody will be on the same page in agreement. So case example, we're really looking to decrease the no-show rate. So the first thing you need to do is, what are you trying to achieve? You're trying to figure out what is the deficit. What is the problem that is a key priority that's getting in the way of us focusing on our mission and vision and providing services? We need to create a strategic plan and engage required resources and stakeholders. So we have at our agency, we have a no-show policy. The no-show policy wasn't written by myself sitting in an office. The no-show policy was developed with clinicians, senior management, support staff and everybody getting on the same page and saying, hey, okay, this makes sense, this is what happens in a no-show, this is what a no-show is, and we also got feedback from the clients as well. And so really we created a strategic plan and we engaged everybody into the process who's going to have to either explain the process or actually do the process. They were part of the team in coming up with the policy. Then step 3, we're looking at diagnostic. Why does the problem exist? The problem with a no-show is low number of billed hours. That says billable, I say billed. Billed hours was directly related to a 60% no-show rate. So if you have a 60% no-show rate, it's going to be very difficult for you to, number one, hit productivity, and more importantly, especially for the clinical staff, we got into the field because we want to help people, and so it's going to be very hard to actually help all of our clients that we want to help on our caseloads if I keep investing some of my precious clinical time on individuals who have a tendency not to attend appointments, okay? And so really that's those things you want to look at. And so step 2 assessment, what can we impact? You can identify that the ratio of billed hours to paid hours is very sensitive variable that has a huge impact on the bottom line. So what do I mean by that? So if I want to increase the number of billed hours to make sure that clinic is able to support itself and it's fiscally viable, one of the easiest things that a clinician can do and an agency can do is start paying attention to the no-shows and to figure out ways to decrease the no-show rate, and what can we do about people who have a tendency to no-show more often than not, and what are we going to do with that individual clinically. So those are the things in looking at key performance indicators related to no-show and fiscal viability in the clinic. Decreasing no-show rate is one of the biggest things you can do with a little bit of effort that's going to get you a lot of results. Step 3 is diagnostic. Why does the problem exist? Well, the problem can exist because a low number of billed hours was directly related to 60% no-show rate. And so some of the conversations that we have with clinicians is not only about the no-show rate, but what does the no-show rate mean? A great example I can give is I have, he's a clinician and he's incredible at running groups. So if I put Kevin in a group, and the group has about 6 members, and Kevin takes over, and he's now leading the group, probably within a month or a month and a half, I will have consistently 10 to 12 people in his group. Okay, he's going to have a low no-show rate because he's very good at engaging. And a no-show rate, it's not only about the fiscal viability of clinic, I think it can also be related to clinical skills and maybe some areas we need to strengthen with certain clinicians related to engagement and follow through and follow up with clients who seem to be disengaging. Step 4, solution, what can we target? We really need to target the no-show rate because it negatively impacts our number of billed hours. 5, setting goals. What do we need to achieve? If we decrease the no-show rate by 10%, it can increase revenue a lot. It's saying here 60%. If I decrease my no-show rate by only 10% and clinicians at our clinic hit for a 37.5-hour a week, they hit 93 weighted units per month. If I decrease the no-show rate, I'm going to increase their productivity. So they're not going to have to be double booking more often than that, okay? And then step 6, the action plan. How do we achieve this? Identifying specific plans of action to implement an attendance policy, for example, as I spoke to before, that we had a no-show policy, and that not only says, it's not cut and dry, and I've heard some no-show policies and attendance policies. People have told me at our clinic, if an individual or a client misses 2 appointments, their case is closed and they can never come back to treatment. That seems a bit plumb, maybe for my liking. However, our no-show policy, it can be that when somebody either has a pattern of missed appointments has a pattern of missed appointments, or if somebody misses 2 appointments in a row, the case is brought for supervision for a discussion about what do we need to do clinically with this individual and help the person to identify the barriers to attending treatment as scheduled. Another thing that I've heard people do is there is what's called sometimes a no-show group, or kind of a treatment readiness group, and if somebody is missing a bunch of appointments after a certain number of appointments, they're assigned to a treatment readiness group, and then they're going to go into the group and have discussions about what's getting in the way of them from participating fully in treatment. And that might be another way that you could look at the no-show rate. And step 7, identifying indicators. How will we know when our changes are working? We'll need to track the no-shows. We need to know before we started the no-show policy and the attendance policy, our no-show rate was 60%. After implementing the attendance policy and the no-show policy, our no-show rate is down to 30%. So you need to have a baseline number before you did the change, and you have to have an ability to get the number on a consistent basis so you know if you're moving in the right direction. Some people are able to run weekly reports with analysis on different kinds of no-shows, whether it's canceled by the client, canceled by the therapist, no call, and review those in supervision. Like I said, at our agency, we're fortunate enough that we have an electronic medical record, and I'm able to run reports that will tell me how many times a certain client has missed in the last month, in the last 6 months. I could, however I want to look at it, whether I want to look at it by client, whether I want to look at it by clinician, whether I want to look at it by clinic, I'm easily able to get that information and data to really make some nice decisions. And then step 8, monitoring and contingency planning. What do we do if we put all these things into place and my no-show rate still is at 60%? Or what if it gets worse? What if it goes to 65%? Then what am I going to do, and what is the agency going to do? Because obviously the plan didn't work. So those really are a lot of examples related to having a key performance indicator, which is really to decrease the no-show rate. By decreasing the no-show rate, it increases the number of billed hours, and it also allows us to, in my opinion, make more clear clinical decisions. And so I want to talk a little bit about, and people, you don't have to snicker at this, loving your data. Okay? Data is your friend. Excel is your friend, and instant actionable information. You change what you watch. So what I'm going to say about this is a couple things. You don't have to be a computer mastermind in order to get data and interpret data and use Excel. What I did is I made buddies with somebody in the finance department because I know enough about Excel that I can get through what I need to get through and get the information. I can create some basic formulas. I'm not an Excel mastermind, and I have no interest in that. But I know that that data and that information is really helpful for us to make clinical decisions, okay? And an example that I can give about data is whenever anybody asks me anything, I always look at the data. So I'm responsible for making sure that our 12 different clinic locations are operating according to regs and providing high-quality person-centered practices and really doing good care. Part of that a lot of times is ensuring psychiatric and access to psychiatric hours, whether that's psychiatric nurse practitioners or doctors. And so a lot of times the program manager will say to me, oh, we need more psychiatrist hours. And the first thing I do is say, well, what does the schedule look like? And then I get kind of 2 different answers usually. Sometimes people say, I don't know, that's what the clinicians are telling me. And I say, okay, well, let's open up the schedule and really see what's there. And then in looking at that, we open up the schedule and we're really able to see whether new and additional psychiatric time is needed or not. okay? Other times I'll go in and I'll look at the NP schedule or the doctor's schedule, and what happens is it looks like it's booked. And then I get a little pit in my stomach like, oh my gosh, where am I going to get more psychiatric time? Now I have to try to, befriend, you know, either one of the PNPs to see if they'll give me more hours. And then I take a step back and I say, look at the data, Julie. And then I'll look, and usually what happens is the psych or the NP is on vacation for a week or 2 weeks. That's why their schedule is so backlogged. So it's an anomaly. It's not that more psychiatric time is needed long term. It means I have a glut because the person's taking time off, okay? And so data is so important to use. And then how do you communicate your data? It's really important. It should be a regular part of clinic management practice. Regularly hand out reports, a part of supervision, positive acknowledgement of superstars identified by the data, and really use your data consistently. So let's talk about data as regular part of your clinic management practice. I make clinic decisions and decisions based on the key performance indicators based on my data. What is the data telling me? And if the data gives me a story that doesn't make sense to what my gut says, which is what Elizabeth talked about a little bit earlier, I look a little bit more at the data to see what's the deal, okay? Why does the data not look like what I thought it should? Regularly hand out reports. We have the luxury at our agency. We have a whole intranet, and you can go and click on, the clinician can click on and look at their productivity at any given point for any month in the last 2 years, okay? I also make sure that people get a written report as well about their productivity, their data, their no-shows, because sometimes if it's the extra step or two, people don't make that time because they're really focused on doing all the clinical work, and then all those pieces that we need to do clinically that we're not able to bill for, that's what our clinicians are focused on. And so if we're able to have support staff really hand out the reports and the data, it's more useful and more likely for clinicians to be using it. And then really positive acknowledgement of superstars identified by the data. So what we do is every month, if somebody hits their productivity or decreases their no-show rate by a certain amount, if they hit their productivity at all, or if they decrease their no-show rate by 5%, they get a little token gift that I send. And this month it's going to be a little thing of lifesavers that say, thank you so much, you're a real lifesaver. And it's those types of things that really help people increase morale and be okay and want to understand the data, because our clinicians are here because they want to help people. And I feel like our job is to help them help people, and part of that is knowing the data, but they're not going to be data geeks like I am. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you, Julie. We want to take a minute to check in with you and move to some survey questions. But before we do that, I just want to mention I do see a hand raised. If you have questions, feel free to chat them in, and then if we have time and if we're able to, we're happy to try and answer questions today, or else move that discussion to next week during the office hours. But again, just please feel free to use the chatting section on the on your screen. So with that, can we move on to the polling questions? So I think we have two questions. The first, do you feel confident that you can implement key performance indicators into your management practice? And so if you could take a moment to respond to that question, as well as question 5, how likely are you to develop key performance indicators to inform your management practices? Okay, and we'll leave that running for a couple more seconds. Okay, why don't we close that out and let's see. It always takes a couple of seconds for the processing to occur. And there we go. Okay, great. It looks like the vast majority of folks who have answered feel confident that they can implement the key performance indicators. It looks like there are a couple of folks who aren't sure, and some who haven't answered. And so just a reminder, please respond to the survey with any specific questions that you have. And again, we can try and answer them next week if we don't have time to get to them today. And then it looks like we got about a third who are likely to now implement key performance indicators, and about 18% who are already doing this, so that's great. And then again, a couple of folks who aren't sure, let us know if there are additional resources or supports you could use to help you get there. Okay, so next steps that we ask you to take are to take a look at your benchmarking tool, your mission, and your strategic plan, all of those guiding documents, and think about your goals and the KPIs you need to implement, to target, to reach your goals. And so just a synopsis of the action steps. You want to identify the results that you expect or that you need to hit to get to your goals. Establish the numbers that you need to reach. The progress that has occurred so far. And think about how quickly the percentage of change that has occurred within each area of review, and the frequency for reviewing the indicators. And again, just to reinforce what Julie was saying, the key is really to review the indicators, to collect your information, to look at the data that you have, and to be reviewing it in your management meetings, in your discussions with clinicians, to be thinking about how are we doing in making progress towards these goals, how are we doing on these key performance indicators, and using that information to sort of take stock and take a moment to think about, do we need to implement something different? Do I need to really reinforce my clinicians who are just doing a fabulous job and we're hitting the KPIs that we need to hit? Again, or do we need to think about additional interventions? Do we need to think about additional steps we need to take? So we found a couple of resources really helpful from a couple different perspectives. The first is a really nice readable article about data generally, and it just helps to sort of think about why data is so important and how it can be both approachable and useful. The second article are about specific case examples of what different nonprofit leaders have done to transform their organizational culture. And data is one of the examples in there. But we found it to be a really useful resource. And again, it's work that is already being done by colleague agencies. And then this article, How Do I Develop Key Performance Indicators, is just a very brief but very readable and accessible article that just takes you through the steps of developing your key performance indicators. Okay. So upcoming BEAM programming. Today we're with Module 10, and we'll have office hours next week. And then Module 11 will wrap up. A few days before Module 11, each agency will be receiving their agency alpha codes, and you can use these codes to identify your clinics during the data presentation. So this will really help you understand where your agency stands with regard to the data you've submitted, so you can benchmark your clinic in relation to colleague clinics. Okay? We've also added 2 additional supplemental trainings at folks' request. So we'll be in July presenting on facilitating successful team meetings, and in August presenting on tools and strategies for managing productivity goals. Okay, and just a reminder about data submissions. If you have yet to submit your data, please email Justine Lai with any questions and or email your data directly to beam@ccsi.org. And with that, did we have any questions that have come through the chatting? Okay. It looks like we do not have any questions. So I think we'll give it another minute, and then we will finish up for today. If you have any questions, please contact us. And as always, we ask that you please fill in the survey afterwards. We really appreciate any feedback and any questions. We're really happy to take those into account and use the data to inform our processes. So we appreciate it. All right. Thanks very much, folks. We appreciate it, and we look forward to next week. Julie, did you want to add anything?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for participating. And sometimes these concepts might not seem as friendly as they can be. The reality is we all work in clinics because we want to help people, and key performance indicators are another way to make sure that we're staying on track. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Julie, and thank you to everyone. We appreciate it.
Thank you.